This episode is supported by MonsterJoysticks.com. Level up your Raspberry Pi with our all-in-one arcade kit using genuine Sanwa arcade parts. And OneClickPrint.com for your photos on canvas, acrylic, gifts and more. Local craftsmen and global delivery.
Hello and welcome to another Retro Road Trip, the first of 2019, and today, well, I'm not quite sure where we are because I've come down countless country lanes to get here, but I know I'm here with Sime. So where are we exactly, Sime?
We're in Devon, sunny Devon.
Somewhere in Devon.
Yes, it's sunny, it's windy, but it is definitely Devon. But yeah, people do have some trouble finding the house.
I know I did. And you may recognise Sime, he's been on my channel before with his complete Dreamcast collection, which I understand you don't have anymore, and we'll find out a bit more about why that is, and a bit more on Sime's thoughts on collecting retro equipment, and also some of the modern equipment he's got in here. There's something over in the corner there which I'm itching to have a go on. So Sime, thank you for having us.
No problem, thank you.
Would you mind showing us around your retro collection?
Absolutely.
Excellent, let's take a look. So Sam, you collect for quite a few systems, don't you? Is there one that stands out as your favourite?
Well, that's the big question. The Dreamcast I've always liked, and that was because I bought it day one. The Neo Geo I've always wet my pants over, and the Commodore 64 was my first love.
Yeah.
Truly was my first love, and I had many a morning of romantic love, and the Commodore 64 was the one. So they're probably my three outstanding, even though I like games, so I'm not so hung up on systems. I like what I like. But I think those three are the ones that I've probably liked from a collecting point of view. So when it comes to more larger collections, it's really those systems that I've collected.
Well, I have to say, as soon as I walked into the room, the thing that caught my eye were these big Neo Geo boxes. Yeah. So can we take a look at some of these?
Yeah, grab one.
Is this how you would have bought them in these boxes?
No.
This is something that you've created, is it?
No.
No? Okay.
So
tell me all about it.
So they're normally called shock boxes. Now, I bought, again in a moment of madness, hundreds of pounds worth of shock boxes. Some chap in America, who I think was called Big Bear, or that was maybe the site of the name of the site. And they come over in a box that was monstrous, and the amount of money to import them caught me slightly unaware. But these boxes obviously come without the inserts.
Right.
And then there's a number of sites that you can find the inserts that you then print out. You can do it professionally, you can do it yourself. And they fit perfectly in. Now so obviously these all contain the MVS, the arcade games.
So they have to be of a size to fit.
They're all the same, because of course they all fit into the MVS board.
One up here.
So yes.
Huge box, and the art is fan art you created using the art from the games.
But generally though, the art does match the AES, which is the home version, which tend to be smaller.
Okay.
I've never actually seen an AES or an AES cartridge, I'll be honest, because I don't get out much. But the MVS is bigger, so you can imagine these are kind of blown up variations. So a lot of these are the same as the home version,
right?
Which have been adapted obviously to go into the shock box with your own art. But they often look, and I'm pretty sure Last Blade, I think that looks exactly the same on the home version, but slightly, a little bit smaller, a little bit
So
scaled
for those
down.
who don't know, MVS, AES. AES is the home version.
Yep.
MVS is the arcade version.
The arcade version.
But from a technical standpoint, very, very similar systems. Do you know what the differences are?
Well, there really isn't anything worth bragging about. You get some extra options on the home versions, to do with, well, I mean, you can do difficulty and everything else on those. So there's a couple of really small differences, which I won't attempt to make myself look daft by pretending I know what they are, because I haven't got an AES.
Now, of all the games you've got here, is this all of your Neo Geo collection up here?
No.
You've got more?
This is all the shock boxes.
Okay.
So, again, after the expense, I wasn't prepared to do too much more of that.
Okay.
So I actually have, this is probably about a third of the collection of games. I have quite a good chunk, maybe 60 cartridges, something like that. I've got a little stash just down there.
Being Neo Geo, a huge amount of the catalogue is fighting games, of course.
Yep.
So you've got to be a beat 'em up fan to really get as into the Neo Geo as you have. One that stands out for me is The Last Blade.
Yeah.
Because on the whole, I'm not a big fan of fighting games, but I feel like this has got just enough story. There's not a huge amount of story, but just enough to get me invested in the game. And then it's got the ambience around it, the little cutscenes, the nice music.
It's kind of classy,
and the sort
I would say.
Yeah,
this
I
is
like
a
the classy
classy
element.
Englishman's fighting game.
Yeah.
But I do agree, it has, again, an ambience, which is what I like about that particular King of Fighters, which is there's a sort of has a feel. And actually, even though Samurai Showdown is very, very good, I think Last Blade, I have to call it Last Braid, which is something else.
The hairdressing simulator.
Yes, it is. I think that, again, excellent games. But to be honest, you're hard pressed to find any games, even the oddities like Double Dragon. They've done a beat 'em up version of the film that came out, which I wasn't aware existed. And it has its own quirks, and it has that slightly older. You tend to find with Neo Geo, when you get to a certain age, they have a certain stiffness to them, which isn't necessarily bad, but they have a definite feel. And it has that old feel, but it still plays really, really good. So it's really, you're hard pressed to find a poor fighting game on the Neo Geo.
And I noticed you've got Aero Fighters over there as well, which is a vertical scroller.
Yes.
With aeroplanes.
But unusually, you scroll vertically, but it's not a vertical game, as in when you look at an arcade machine, you normally get a vertical screen.
Screen is in the
because, of course, the Neo Geo
landscape.
didn't have vertical screens. So it's a horizontal screen, but a vertical shoot 'em up. It's a little bit old school in style.
So in none of the Neo Geo cabinets, they never rotated the screen?
No.
No? Oh, that's strange.
Well, the idea was, of course, is that you imagine if you've got a 4-slot, one of these, or an 8-slot, well, there's not an 8-slot, but you maybe even want to make one, or the 6-slot, you can imagine you press the button, it would be quite a trick when you press the button for the screen to rotate. So, yes, they are.
So this is all about arcade owners getting as much for their money as they can out of one cabinet.
And it was a breakthrough, really, because before that, it was buy a board, buy a cabinet, buy everything. All of a sudden with this, you get a box with some instructions in, and your game, you shove it in, you stick your little transparent card at the top, and you've just given yourself a brand new arcade game.
Nice. Well, that's the Neo Geo. What system do you want to show us next time?
Well, you wanted to talk about the Dreamcast.
Yes.
My beloved Dreamcast, and why I decided that I didn't need them all.
Let's do that. Let's shuffle over here to your Dreamcast section.
Oh, right. Shuffle down.
I'm going to take a seat here, Simon, because there is something of a height difference between us.
There is.
My head's just going out of shot there. So
I'm stunningly tall
here.
while you're stunningly short.
So I can take a look at your Dreamcast collection. Now, when you came to see me, you had a complete PAL set
I did.
of Dreamcast games. This is noticeably reduced.
It is.
Tell us why.
Well, it was a decision I made, really, which is that generally I collect what I like. I only care for what I like, and I don't really care too much for collecting complete systems. But the Dreamcast was a little bit different. Again, this was the first system I ever bought day one. It's a little bit of a special place. The boxes are kind of nice, though I didn't realise that there was quite so much of a variance of colour. But the boxes are consistent as great games, great arcade games. And one day I just thought, do you know what? I've got kind of a lot of these. Maybe I should try to kind of get them all. And as with, I guess, a lot of people who try to collect them all, it's the collecting all syndrome that's the fun bit. As soon as you've collected them all, you then look at them and go, I'm never going to play that.
Yeah, how many of them do I actually play? Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't play this many, to be honest, but I had quite a large cut down. I think there's 217 games, I think. And I probably got rid of only probably about 50, 60, 70. So I'm not seriously sure. Maybe there's 150 left, something like that. But there was a lot of the big expensive games that are kind of nice to have. But if I'm really not going to play them, they're just... You know, they might go up in the future, but that wasn't really what it was about. It was really about getting rid of things, slimming it down, then at least I can fit it actually properly, and it's easier to move about, easier to keep, and it's easier for me to select games that I want. So yeah,
Did you consider selling them all as a complete set? Because that would have been attractive to some buyers to be able to instantly buy the Dreamcast.
I don't know though, is it really attractive?
There will be some buyers out there who want the easy option and have enough money to take the easy option.
Yes, but they would have lost all the fun.
Yeah, I agree.
I suppose of buying it in bits and pieces. So no, I mean I ended up in the end actually I just went onto the Dreamcast Facebook group and put them on there because you're obviously then the people who are buying them are the people who really do want them. I didn't really want the eBay rigmarole. And it was quite a weird evening because it was almost loads of messages coming in, and you're trying to shuffle and make sure that people are getting what they want and the prices they want and the conditions what they want, because you don't want people getting something they're not expecting. Yeah, it was kind of crazy.
We won't dwell too much on the Dreamcast collection, but again, there'll be a link in the description where you can see when Simon came to visit me with the complete PAL collection, and you can hear his thoughts on it and see all of those games. So we've shuffled along now to what looks like Commodore 64, and you've also pulled some magazines out here.
Yes.
And I guess this represents, correct me if I'm wrong, but this represents the first system that you had, is that right?
I think I had a VIC-20.
Okay.
I think I must be getting old and I can no longer remember my own past. Maybe I remember someone else's. I'm pretty sure I had a VIC-20, but it didn't really do anything. I did have a VIC-20 because my friend Brian had a VIC-20. And we played Blitz, and I'm pretty sure Blitz was pretty much the first game I probably ever played. Yeah. And then I had a VIC-20, but it just didn't really... Maybe I was just too young at that point. Right. So it just didn't work. So the Commodore 64 was definitely my first proper gaming experience.
I know it's a system you cover an awful lot on your channel.
Yes.
So you've obviously got a lot of passion for it. And tied in with that is the magazines. They're all part and parcel of the same period.
Exactly.
I love reading through magazines of the period. What was your magazine of choice for the Z64?
It was, of course, Zap.
Yeah.
Now, I urge you to have a little smell of that. No, I urge you to. Because that just smells like... That smells like age, doesn't it? That smells like the 80s.
Does. It does. There's even a bit of pick a mix in there as well.
It's slightly decomposing, I'm sure. And this is one of the ones I keep actually, because of course the only trouble with these magazines, when you read them, they're naturally just going to slowly fall apart, and you just have to kind of accept that. But obviously, this is a Zap number 1.
This is the first one.
That's the very
why you've
first
got it
one.
In its protective cover.
Yeah, and because it's getting a little tad tatty. But that's Zap number 1, and of course, Zap's quite an interesting one. Well, one, it was a brilliant magazine. It was groundbreaking. So it was the first time when it was kind of written by gamers, Jazz Rignall and Gary Penn. A lot of people have kind of heroes, but when I was a kid, the only people really I had any interest in was Nigel Mansell and Jazz Rignall and Gary Penn. Mm-hmm. These were my heroes of the time because they were doing what I wanted to do, either drive a really, really fast car or write about games for a living. And this was a huge thing. And the first maybe 3-4 mags were a little bit wishy-washy compared to the later ones. I think from about number 4 and so on, it really, everything was kind of cemented. So kind of what got a sizzler in this version was, was rather than being anything 90 plus, it's kind of in the 80s. So
everybody wanted to write for a computer magazine.
Exactly.
It's not like now where you could just start your own WordPress page, join a blogging site and put your thoughts down very quickly. To be a video game reviewer was the ultimate dream, alongside being a Formula 1 driver for guys like us.
I achieved neither. I'll point out, life is clearly just an utter disappointment. But when I read that, though, I feel like I'm there again. And I think playing games is one thing. I like playing the games, I like enjoying them, but you can't remove a modern perspective on a game. And I'm sure people will agree or disagree, and that's fine. But to me, some games have kind of slightly lost their magic. But when you read about them, it's just like it was the day it came out. You feel that real passion. So it's a wonderful thing.
Even in the lifetime of these magazines, you would have had the initial release and review and then the budget release. Yeah. And even in that short period, it would drop 10, 20, maybe more percentage points. Yeah. Maybe because it was being reviewed by someone different, or just because, with time it had been superseded.
Things had moved on.
Yeah.
Well, and Elite was a prime one where there was I know that was a big discussion point within the magazine at the time because it was only reviewed by one guy and everyone else slightly disagreed. Though I love Elite. But really interesting one. Other magazines that I really like, and actually I also like Super Plays. So I've got, I think, pretty much a complete set of Super Plays and Meme Machines and magazines like that. But the Dreamcast magazine is also a real cracker.
That's a premium cover, isn't it?
That is nice. A premium cover. And that's something I liked about this magazine, actually, because I suppose this was the Dreamcast again. The PlayStation had sort of forged the way with kind of consoles being kind of cool and kind of funky, and they really took that on board with the Dreamcast. And the magazine is, thick pages, high quality. Now you'd probably think about and look at the guys reviewing it and think, well, they're a bit idiotic. But at the time, that seemed pretty cool. So yeah, it has a real way of writing. Again, it's very much puts you in the time, and and that's why I like them. And whenever I review a game, I always do like to read if I've got the magazine with it in, and often I may mention that I actually enjoy reading it first because it kind of sets the mood a little bit.
I'm going to put you on the spot now because I know it's a really difficult question, but pick one Commodore 64 game from your collection there.
Well, you'd think that would be hard.
Oh, he's gone straight for it.
But I will mention more than one because it would be rude not to. Because the Commodore 64 was, I suppose, because it was so limited on what it could do, and some of the games were so terribly dreadful, that when a shining light come out, it really was a sparkle. In its time, as in when a game was released in its moment, I think could be the greatest game of all time.
Really?
Obviously, new games are better.
Yeah,
but they weren't released in 1986.
Moment of time.
I just guessed it was 1986, but that sounds about right.
Well, this magazine is July 87.
Oh, there we go. A year out.
Whizball, it's magic. Bizarre arcade action from Sensible Software, of course, of Sensible Soccer and Cannon Fodder fame. Become the wizard and conquer the colour creatures, stir the spell and zoom around the planet in your space transporter. And you would have paid £8.95, not for the Hit Squad re-release, but originally on the Commodore. The most expensive being the Amstrad, $14.95 on disc.
Yeah, well, you had to pay for your sins, I guess. But a game which some people have struggled to maybe understand quite what's going on, because it is a bizarre little world. But as soon as you put the time in the effort, it's just a magical game. It almost doesn't feel like a game. It's like a weird, strange experience. And I suppose, again, it comes down to how it hits you square in the heart, and that was definitely one that I loved. But I did also grab Paradroid as well. Andrew Braybrook can do no wrong. Well, actually, he did do wrong because some of his later games weren't very good. But at this point, he could do no wrong. And of course, they wrote in Zap, they'd done one of those every month. He would write what he was doing, building up to the release of Paradroid. So the excitement was once a month, as it was then, was pretty high. And then the game came out, and it was an absolute killer. And I still think it's a real genius game. And though a lot of people prefer Uridium, I think Paradroid is definitely his defining moment.
Now, there's a lot more systems here, a lot more games that I want to look at, but there are two things over here that are really catching my eye, and I think we need to go and look at those if we may, and then we'll come back and see what else you've got.
Okay.
So, Sime, not one, but two candy cabs, is that right?
Candy cabs, yeah. Japanese candy cabs. You sit down, you don't stand up, a bit more relaxing. Big, wonky, great screen.
How big is that screen?
29 inches.
29 inches.
Corner to corner.
Yeah. And I see you've got them set up, one portrait, one landscape for your shooters. So
one vertical, one horizontal.
Best of both.
Yeah, and that was a conscious decision. I bought one once, and this one actually, to be honest, the kind of the screen orientation is a little bit out. I've got a kit to change it, but I'm kind of scared, so I'm not going to bother because I will almost certainly electrocute myself and die. So originally, I bought it actually for Neo Geo specifically,
right?
And then I found obviously that if you take this front off and if you lift it and you don't break wind, you're doing it wrong because it's the heaviest screen you've ever felt. And you can obviously rotate it around. And that become a tad impractical because I bought
Carefully, you've got to be careful where you put your fingers.
Yeah, motorcycle gloves I found. I used to do motorcycle gloves and my wife would be behind kind of doing this.
Oh, and the dangerous end.
Yes.
Pop the wife around there.
And then I'm lifting it around and you can just about do it with one. You're probably supposed to do it with two. But really, really heavy. So it's quite impractical. And I bought a copy of Raiden Fighters, the arcade board, which I've still got over there. And yeah, so I was always messing around with it, and it was just a pain. So yes, I bought a second one in a moment of love.
You said that you bought this for the Neo Geo, but it's running Rastan, which is not a Neo Geo game. So what's happening in there? Have you put another board in?
I have.
Okay.
Guess what?
Pi
2 Jammer. There we go. Yeah, I've had some trouble remembering that, haven't I? Yeah, there's a German chap. I think he's German. Germany name. So if he's not German, he'll have to forgive me. Yeah, Pi 2 Jammer, and he's got a Facebook forum and a webpage and so on. And he sells a little device that allows you to plug a Raspberry Pi into this other device, and that allows you to plug it straight into your jammer cabinet without any modifications.
Okay.
And that's the big thing, no modifications.
Yeah, so the Candy Cab then conforms to the jammer standard. So there's just a harness in there so you can plug the JAMA boards in. Presumably with the Neo Geo, there's a conversion to plug Neo Geo into JAMA, or does Neo Geo meet the JAMA standard?
No, they kind of cheat a little bit because JAMA will only support 3 buttons,
right,
and Neo Geo uses 4.
Right.
So, like if it's Street Fighter, they use a harness, which is an extra plug that goes in, and you have to physically wire those buttons in. Neo Geo, they cheated and used some of the lines that weren't really used for a lot. So you actually could plug a Neo Geo into a
standard JAMA,
but then you had to kind of shove a cable in. Well, you do in this one because the cables are already wired in.
Right.
You have to like shove a cable in. Bob's your uncle. With the Pi to JAMA, at that point you will be able to run MAME through RetroPie and other such things, which this is running, and that gives you the benefit you can play all the games you like. I try not to put too many on because it just spoils you, saves all your high scores, and to be honest, unless you've got a ridiculous eye for detail, I would judge that you would not be able to tell the difference.
Sure.
The tricky thing though is doing things like putting coins in.
I really like it. Should we play some games?
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you fancy?
Something 2-player, something co-op.
Okay.
Let's have a go. Done him.
Big fat for Lamatron.
Oh yeah.
Come out on the ST. That was my first sort of first time I think I knew this even existed.
Get out of the way. Let me at him. There he is. So we've just seen the JAMA to Pi there, a little close-up of it, and you can see how easy it is to plug it into the harness.
Absolutely.
And I think we confirmed there, looking at it a bit more closely, it is using the composite out from the 3.5mm audio jack, audio and video jack, and then the GPIO pins are used for the inputs. So a nice, easy solution, but it's very easy to just pull the Pi out and then plug in some boards, and you've got some boards here, haven't you, right next to me. So I'm going to grab them and you can tell me exactly what we've got here.
Okay, I might have to guess one or two of them.
Well, this one's got Namco written all over it.
That one's a Mr. Driller.
Mr. Driller.
Yes.
Okay.
And of course you can see they don't generally brag about what they are because there's really very little point, and this one's obviously actually made up of 2 boards. But yes, that's a Mr. Driller, which is a great little game. I bought it because I thought it was vertical and it turned out being horizontal or the other way round.
Okay.
I had a particular sort of want for it, and then it turned out that the way it went was actually different to I expected.
This one out here with this, it's obvious which one this is.
Yes, well this is
Raiden Fighters.
And I think this was one of the games where I had the Neo Geo and that was really my thing. And then I started getting more and more into shoot-em-ups. And that was the first JAMA board I bought that wasn't Neo Geo related.
Right, there's the JAMA connector there.
Exactly, and that is a brilliant game as well. Since then I've bought various games and sold them on, but Raiden Fighters I've always kept. Mm-hmm. And as with all these games, they're all a little bit tatty, and this one's got a little bit of like dust on it, or probably quite a lot of dust on it. But of course, these things have seen life, which is kind of nice in a way. Again, these aren't generally pristine. These things have been about, and this one's the same again. Where this board, I guess, can come off and can be replaced with other boards.
It looks like it can pop off. 1996. This one is dated serial number 3976.
Yeah.
I don't know how many Raiden Fighters they produced.
More than that.
Yeah, sure. And you've got the battery there for your to back up your high scores.
Yes. Which they tend to solder in, which is rather annoying.
Is that soldered in?
Yeah, they're in good and proper normally. So they're a right job. And actually on the MVS, I changed it for a battery you can actually replace.
Yeah.
Because it is a bit of a pain.
Now there's one here that really stands out. This bright red board. Well, you can't even see the board. It's all encased here in plastic. Tell us about this. The King of Fighters, is it?
That's King of Fighters, and this is an Atmos Wave. Basically, it's a Naomi board. I believe it's got a little bit less RAM, a little tiny bit less powerful than a Naomi.
Right.
So it's basically a second Naomi board. And again, all these little bits of plastic come out, and you can plug in various connectors and expansions.
So Naomi, of course, what the Dreamcast was based on.
Exactly.
And it looks like this is the game itself. This is the
That
cart.
is the game, yeah, and that's how they come.
Very easy to swap games around on that then. And then with JAMA connector again.
Correct.
So that's a very easy one to operate. Volume.
Well, this is one of the nice things with this one, which is JAMA, because of course Naomi isn't JAMA.
Right.
You have to run through, because it's JVS, which was a later system, and you have to kind of go through another converter to get it back to be JAMA compatible. Whereas this one, it's just got a little switch, and you're straight back to JAMA, so that can just plug in and work. One of the problems with these, of course, by the time these games come out, a whole lot of these were pirated. So you have to be really, really careful. There's lots of things to look for, such as the corners on the pirated ones tend to be square and funny little odds and sods like that. Great little system, bit of a shame it's not currently working. Because those, again, they're games I don't really own. I know Neo Wave come out on the PlayStation 2, for example, though again it's a dreadful version.
Are they emulated on your Pi setup or not?
No, the Pi's not really powerful enough to chundle these along.
Right, we're sat on the floor now like a couple of school kids, exactly as it should be. We've got some really familiar items here from my upbringing, so let's just go through all of them together, I think, collectively.
I have no allegiance to anybody.
No.
I decided a long time ago allegiance is for wimps.
Yeah.
Yes, and also as well, I suppose I've been lucky in a way that I've always managed to buy a console, even if it meant selling the old one. So like the Mega Drive, I had a Mega Drive, I sold it and got SNES, and I sold it and got Mega Drive. So therefore I've kind of flipped back and forwards on a whim, often at great expense and wasted money. So therefore I like what I like. The Sega Saturn, I actually used to work in a tandy shop. We used to sell those. And then again, we were really disappointed because we actually basically had a machine in Sega Rally, which was brilliant. And then some person come in rudely and purchased it. It was a good day for sales, but a dreadful day for fun. So I picked one of them up later on, and actually the library just didn't do it for me. And we know it's very much a Japanese library machine. And so from the point of power, you can see I've just kind of got the classics, the ones I like. So I guess that was a disappointment in its time. But I don't really think I've been disappointed with a lot of consoles at the time, really, honestly.
I like it. For a retro collector, you're very sort of in the moment, forward looking. It is what it is. I enjoyed it at the time, and you go back and enjoy it now without any negativity towards the companies, towards the decisions. It's all about the games for you, isn't it?
It's all about the games. I'm not really into the technical side of things. I just like playing games. I did think of 3DO, though. That was a disappointment. So there was a disappointment. I spent £499 on a 3DO. And again, I sold my entire Amiga collection and 1200 with hard disk, which at the time was quite a thing, just to buy that with FIFA, which was an absolute dreadful game on the 3DO. And it was only later on somewhat saved by Road Rash and Need for Speed, which were brilliant games, and therefore at least softened the blow somewhat and made the... So yeah, I don't have any terrible feelings towards the 3DO. But that, as I suppose... As a disappointing machine, I guess the 3DO would have to win it.
I like this Need for Speed on the Sega Saturn, but it stands out. Road Rash actually also in these VHS type cases.
Dusty, isn't
nice. Yeah, a bit dusty.
You ever tried dusting this stuff?
Adds to the charm.
Yes.
That's much nicer than these papery thinner boxes. I don't know what the Sega Saturn, the US releases came out looking like. Maybe someone up there can tell us. Did they come in these VHS style cases or these papery cases? These are like your Neo Geo cases. These are really nice.
Well, it's funny, and I said I was in a place we sold them at the time, and I don't remember selling these boxes, so I don't know quite why they're in them. They're obviously original.
These are both Electronic Arts. I don't know if it was an EA thing.
Oh, and they were buggers, weren't they, for making people do things, like on the Mega Drive with the silly little tab that everyone thought was magic and didn't do anything. That sort of thing. So maybe that was part of their ongoing agreement with Sega. Would make sense.
Thank you for joining us on this retro road trip. Thank you, Simon, for having us here today.
Thank you for coming all the way down to sunny Devon.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure to come and see you. And do join us again for another retro road trip soon. Thanks for watching. Take care.
It's a double thumbs up.
Hey!